Thanks for joining us as we cap off another busy week of all things people, power, and politics. So much going on in Washington and Lansing. This is The Pulse. I'm Root Raj. We're hearing from former FBI Director James Comey after he was indicted on charges of lying to Congress and obstruction. His reaction from former U.S. Attorney Matthew Schneider tonight. And two capitals, same problem, same situation. Budget battles that seem like they're coming right down to the wire. Congressman Tim Walberg takes us inside the process with just days before a partial federal government shutdown. And Governor Whitmer touts a budget deal at the state level, but not so fast. Nothing is final just yet. State Representative Noah Arbit with where things stand as the clock ticks at both levels of government. And the Washington budget battle is where we begin tonight because Congress has until midnight Wednesday to fund the government or trigger that partial shutdown. And we told you Thursday that the White House Budget Office is telling agencies to get ready for mass firings if that happens. The Office of Management and Budget said agencies should consider layoffs for programs whose funding would expire next week and aren't consistent with the president's priorities. Normally, non-essential workers are furloughed and get back to their jobs when the shutdown is done. Right now, both sides are blaming one another.
And God forbid there's a shutdown, which we don't want. American people are going to know they're in charge and say, what the heck? Or worse.
We will see if there's enough Democrat senators who are dumb enough to follow Chuck Schumer off the edge of that cliff.
Well, Democrats, they want to reverse Medicaid cuts from President Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill known as the budget bill. But Republicans say the Dems would drastically increase spending. Democratic leaders plan to meet with President Trump to try to hammer out a deal. But the president ended up nixing that idea, saying at this point it wouldn't be productive. That's just scratching the surface, so let's pick up the pace and run through some of the other big stories making news right now. Two major station groups announced they're bringing Jimmy Kimmel Live back. ABC ended Kimmel's suspension earlier this week over controversial remarks about Charlie Kirk's killing. He had his first show back on Tuesday, but Nexstar and Sinclair broadcast groups still said they were going to wait before they brought the show back. Both groups announced they'll be bringing those shows back to the station as of Friday night. The groups operate stations in the Lansing, Grand Rapids, and Traverse City markets, although most viewers in Grand Rapids were still able to see the show since there are actually two ABC affiliates down there. Well, the Supreme Court allows the Trump administration to keep nearly $5 billion in foreign aid frozen. Like several rulings we've seen, it was along ideological lines. The ruling involves congressionally approved aid, but President Trump said last month he likely wouldn't spend it. A lower court judge said the president's action was likely illegal. The majority said while the president's authority in foreign affairs weighed heavily in its decision, it also said this is not a final ruling. And the woman who tried to kill former President Gerald Ford back in 1975 has died. Sarah Morris spent more than 30 years in prison. The 95-year-old died at a Tennessee nursing home. Morris shot at Ford in San Francisco, but a bystander knocked the gun out of her hand as she shot. The bullet hit a building. Moore was paroled at the end of 2007. Former FBI Director James Comey now on the other side of the law. The Justice Department indicting him, accusing him of lying to Congress and obstruction. It's related to Comey's testimony before Congress in 2020 about the investigation into ties between Russia and President Trump's 2016 campaign. This comes just days after the president appealed to Attorney General Pam Bondi on social media, asking her to charge Comey and other perceived adversaries. Comey shared a video on Instagram saying he's innocent while also making this call to all Americans.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does.
President Trump spoke to reporters on his way to the Ryder Cup tournament. One of the journalists asked him if it's more about justice or revenge. Here's what he had to say.
It's about justice, really. It's not revenge. It's about justice. It's also about the fact that you can't let this go on. They are sick, radical left people, and they can't get away with it. And Comey was one of the people. He wasn't the biggest, but he's a dirty cop. He's always been a dirty cop. Everybody knew it.
Joining us now via Zoom to give us some insight into this case and react to the charges, former U.S. Attorney Matthew Schneider. And it's so good to see you. Thanks for joining us here tonight on The Pulse.
Thank you, Roop.
So there are two basic charges here that Comey is facing. One is false statements to Congress. The other, obstructing congressional proceedings. Let's take both of those for a moment and tell us where these stem from.
So they stem from testimony that James Comey gave to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they're based on statements that he made. And he made some statements about whether or not he had essentially leaked information. And then his deputy contradicted him and said that the opposite. So he's being charged with the false statement in front of Congress. And the issue there is really not as much as whether or not a false statement was made, but the issue is whether or not it was material. Did it impact Congress if it was false? Did it have a tendency to influence that? And then the other issue is, did Jim Comey intentionally and willfully make that false statement? That's the burden that the prosecutors will have to show in order to get a conviction.
What does a defense attorney say in this case? When someone says, hey, he was under oath at the time and he said some things that were inconsistent, how does a defense attorney take this on? Do they just say that maybe he didn't remember?
Well, either that or that he was truthful. They'll have some creative arguments that they're going to have to make there. But even before they get to that, before they get to the jury, they're going to be making other arguments about venue and that they can't get a fair trial. And they'll probably bring up President Trump's tweets. They'll probably say that what he has said in public somehow punish or implicate bad relations amongst the juries, and that he can't get a fair trial with this jury pool. And that will be decided by the judge before it ever gets to a jury, and that's likely to happen as well.
Talk for a moment about the timing. It is perhaps curious to some about why it's happening now, as, of course, he's taken to social media, the president has, asking for action so many years later.
So the timing is now because there was a statute of limitations, which means you have to bring this type of charge within 5 years or you can't bring it again. And that's why the prosecutors did this. In a broader sense, if you look at this, it's very unusual to have a case in American criminal law where you can actually see the future. And this is that kind of case. I think we can see that there's now a possibility that Letitia James and other people could be charged that are similar in situation. And then we have to play that out. We don't really know how that's going to work. Either Comey and other people may be convicted, and if that's the case, then American people can have faith in the jury system. That's the way that it works. Or they're acquitted and found not guilty. And if that's the case, people will be wondering why these charges will be brought in the first place. All of that is to say that no matter how this turns out, there's going to be a lot of animosity and arguments on both sides of the political spectrum.
The president was asked the question, as you heard there just a moment ago, asking if this is justice or revenge. Is it possible that it could be a little bit of both?
Well, we have to take him about what he said, both there and also looking at his past tweets and his comments to the media. If you analyze those, the defense will pick out the statements in which they think he's being vindictive. I think President Trump's legal team will pick out his own statements where he's saying, I think James Comey is guilty and he should be prosecuted. And that is in line with this prosecution. So it's not necessarily a slam dunk that President Trump's prior statements are going to harm him. They could actually be coming to his defense.
Zoom out for a moment and remind people, because this news cycle is so heavy, it is so hard to keep track of. Take us back a few years and remind us about what this all kind of entails. This is the 2016 election interference case that so many people are talking about then.
Right, and there's some disagreement in the media about precisely who was involved in this. We do know that James Comey did testify in front of the Senate, and he was asked whether or not he had ever leaked information and given or authorized people to leak information, give that to the media or give it to somebody else. And he said no. And then he was asked again about that years later by Senator Cruz, and he said no again. Now, other people, such as Andrew McCabe, have said, no, Jim Comey actually did authorize me to do that. So that's the issue. Somebody is not telling the truth, and it'll be up to the jury to determine whether or not that's Jim Comey or it's Andrew McCabe, or maybe it's some combination of both.
Well, it's going to be an interesting case that the entire nation and perhaps the world will be watching closely. The arraignment is happening, I believe, in the second week of October. So we'll be talking, of course, more then. But I want to thank you, former U.S. Attorney Matthew Schneider, for joining us today on The Pulse.
Thank you.
Great to see you. We're turning to the budget battle playing out in Congress after the break. Congressman Tim Walberg taking us inside the process. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Joining us to take us inside the budget battle playing out in Washington, Congressman Tim Walberg. And by the way, we aren't looking at this from a partisan perspective tonight. We want to give you a look at how the process is working. And so later in the show, you're going to be hearing from a Democratic state lawmaker talking about what's happening here in Lansing. So in the nation's capital, so many people are concerned about what could be happening here. And so, Representative Walberg, it's so good to see you. Thanks for joining us here on The Pulse.
Rupert, it's good to be with you. And as the chairman of the Education Workforce Committee in Congress, we'd like to educate the people on what's actually happening. So thank you for giving me this chance.
Well, and we believe in this, with the temperature as high as it is in this country, let's have conversations with Democrats and Republicans without having to argue about this right now and adjudicate everything here, because there's a lot at stake. And we know that obviously there are so many people who have priorities when it comes to this budget. Give us an idea as to where the two sides stand right now. And are we going to actually reach a deal, given the fact that it was just the Jewish holiday, Rosh Hashanah, so many people are off, the president now going to the Ryder Cup. Are we going to reach a deal by Wednesday?
Well, I hope so. It's truly up to Chuck Schumer at this point. I guess to lay the groundwork, the House, we've been working aggressively on it. The Speaker gave instructions to the House Appropriations Committee to complete all 12 of the appropriations bills. That has taken place. All 12 have come out of committee. 3 have been sent over to the Senate already and await some type of action where you have a 60-vote requirement to bring them up for consideration. That's where we sit right now. We know that what we put forward in the House Appropriations Committee, there will be debate about that. We realize that with a bipartisan solution to all of this, our bills will only be useful to be tools for the Senate to work on, and ultimately a conference committee, which will hopefully bring the two sides together. Yeah. But at this point in time, the Senate has not passed any bills for the appropriations. So we passed the CR last Friday, well ahead of time, to make sure that air traffic controllers are paid and on the job. ICE agents are on the job, Border Patrol agents, that senior citizens receive their Medicare checks on time, and that rural hospitals, with the major infusion of $50 billion toward rural hospitals, that they're taken care of as well. So I hope that common sense prevails and that the Senate can come together in a bipartisan way and pass the bill.
And Representative, we should point out also, although you said, that's up to Senator Schumer, we have to make sure that we point out that this president also tentatively was thinking about perhaps having a meeting with Democrats, and then said that they're not being serious enough. Certainly that meeting would perhaps move the meter. We've seen it happen in past administrations. So let's hope that they come to an agreement and everyone can at least chat and talk so that we can move forward. But I do want to talk about what the Democrats are looking to do here, where I know the Republicans don't want to budge, which is kind of securing some of those the Medicaid and making sure that we can kind of roll back some of those cuts. Any hope at all that there's some wiggle room here for any of that to happen?
No, because that would be tremendously negative in its outcome to what we did. We cut no Medicaid dollars. For legitimate Medicaid patients, they are still receiving it.
There are Medicaid cuts in the actual budget, in the bill itself, that would allow, I think, something close to 10 or 11 million people to all of a sudden realize that they don't have Medicaid. And that's a problem for a lot of people. And I thought Republicans and Democrats have both addressed that.
Only if they're illegal aliens would they receive cuts. Only if they're frauding the system would they receive cuts. And I don't think the constituents in this state, in my district, the 5th District, want to cut Medicaid from people who genuinely need it. And those are senior citizens. Those are people that have disabilities, have infirmities, or mothers, single parents that have to stay at home with kids.
Are you worried about people falling through the cracks, Representative, at all? Because I know I talked to a couple of folks at a rural hospital not far, but probably about 2 hours from here in Southfield, who are very concerned about the Medicaid funding that goes to the actual center, not so much the individuals inside, but the kind of quality care that they need. Are you concerned that someone could fall through the cracks? I know the state right now is trying to figure out, hey, if people do fall through the cracks, how do we fill that back hole?
Well, there's always that chance. We did our best to make sure that legal recipients and hospitals would not have that problem. Certainly, if that happens, there are ways to fix that for the individuals. But we put $50 billion, the largest influx of dollars to rural health care and rural hospitals that's ever been given, to take up the slack for Medicaid recipients who were coming, who shouldn't have been, who were committing fraud or illegals. We wanted to help the hospitals to cover that loss. And I think we did very well with that $50 billion. It's sad that so much inaccurate information has been put out by my Democrat colleagues and national media about cuts to Medicaid. That hasn't happened. And that is, I think, a sinister way of being very political. I don't want to get into that.
I hear you. I do want to ask you one more question in the minute we have left, though, Representative. The concern about workers being permanently cut off the rolls, the federal rolls, furloughs are something we're all used to if there's a shutdown. Are you concerned about the long-term, viability of a plan that basically tells people, hey, you're fired?
Well, I think the president has indicated when he ran for office and 77 million people put him into office, when he said we're going to downsize the federal government. We're going to give much control back to the states, especially in the area of education. We want to have a government that works for the people and meets the people's needs without excessive dollars being put in. And I think this is a shot across the bow that says, listen, I'm willing to work with Democrats and Republicans on this, but Chuck Schumer, if you shut down by not allowing the vote to take place, then we're going to make cuts ourselves so that we can continue making sure that dollars go to senior citizens, Social Security, air traffic controllers, our VA recipients, our military families. We don't want to take them out of it, and we'd like to keep our national parks open so that people can enjoy that as well.
Well, you know what? You're right, Senator Schumer, the president, you, all your colleagues who are Republicans and Democrats have a tremendous task ahead of you, which is to do the people's work and get something done. And I know that you're working hard to do that as you're there in Washington. I want to thank you so much, Representative, for joining us here on The Pulse tonight.
Rube, thank you very much. We'll work hard.
Great to be with you. From the nation's capital to the state capitol, a budget battle playing out there. Governor Gretchen Whitmer touting a deal, but you know what? Nothing's actually done yet. We're actually seeing how close things are with State Representative Noah Arbit next on The Pulse. It is People, Power, and Politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show. This is The Pulse. Here to talk about the budget battle playing out in Lansing. Democratic State Representative Noah Arbit, as we did with our Republican lawmaker in Washington, talking about the framework of the deal and trying to kind of figure out where priorities lie right now. And so, Representative Arbit, it's always good to see you.
Great to be here.
You're wearing your pride on your sleeve right now.
My district, my constituents. That's right. That's right.
You want to separate this. I know you and I have talked through the day here and there about the different buckets of money that are in this budget. First of all, we'll get to that in a moment. But we should point out that even though there is framework for this deal to be done, there is not a deal that has been done. There's nothing binding. The reason? We need votes.
That's right.
So we are waiting right now. Have you seen the budget? Have other lawmakers seen the budget?
No, the budget isn't complete yet. I know last night the governor announced that there was a framework agreement reached between herself, the Senate Majority Leader, and the Speaker of the House, and that's great. It's really important that we have a framework agreement target set for how much we want to allocate money in each bucket of spending. That's incredibly important.
But was the announcement? The announcement was perhaps reported in a premature way to imply as though it was a done deal. It's not.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think certainly there are many legislators in my caucus and in the Republican caucus who thought that it was a bit premature, and I think that's a fair critique of that statement. It's really important that as we're continuing to negotiate, and I know negotiations were happening all day today, it will happen all day through tomorrow, this weekend, up until Tuesday. it's incredibly important that we are, making sure that we're not leaving any funding behind. I know if you want to get into the conversation on the specific.
I do want to get into the specifics, but I want to point out this governor ran for office, of course, the first time around saying fix the damn roads.
That's right.
The roads are part of this woman's legacy, this leader's really kind of her promise.
That's
and
right.
making sure that promise is kept is important to her.
That's
and
right.
apparently also important to Speaker Hall.
That's right.
And so there's a lot of money that's earmarked for that in this bill. Talk about the roads for a moment.
Yeah, so that's the first bucket of funding, is road funding. It's really, really important for the governor and for the speaker to come together to find some durable, long-term funding to fix our roads. I think everyone, not only in my district, but across the state, knows that our roads are in poor condition. We've done the bonding program that the governor put together, but now it's time to find some durable, long-term, ongoing funding. And so what the solution that they came up with was all taxes paid at the pump should go to fix the roads. And so there's a sales tax on gasoline, and basically we're diverting that funding. Instead of that funding going to education in schools, it's now going to go to fix the roads. But then that creates a problem because we've got to find money to backfill education, because we will not pass a budget that leaves our schools, our teachers, our students high and dry. We simply will not do it. I will not vote for that. My colleagues
I don't think
will
any
not vote for that.
I can tell you right now, there's going to be a problem. There's not going to get a vote from the Democrats.
Correct. So we're waiting to see what that backfill looks like in terms of the school aid fund. But there's also a problem there in that 6% of the sales tax on gas also goes to local cities, villages, and townships. And we have not seen any indication that there's going to be a backfill of that money. That's $95 million. That's not going to fund local police, local fire, as well as all the efforts and things that your local municipality does.
So revenue sharing. That's another big question mark.
That's right.
That will keep people from just going to run to vote for this.
Right.
And then we have education. Talk for a moment about what's being done to make sure that that's taken care of.
Well, every indication I have, indicates that, there will be what's called a backfill, basically making sure that any money that was diverted from the school aid fund, we will get money, ongoing money that fills that void, so that, they will be held harmless. There will be no hurt to the
cuts.
education fund. Exactly. That's really, really important. I think that's a bipartisan priority to make sure that education is fully funded. So we're waiting to see the details, though. Again, the devil is always in the details.
Yeah, and that's true in Washington, it's true in Lansing.
That's right.
And finally, really, really important, I know that you're going to vehemently disagree with what you heard Representative Walberg talk about when it came to Medicaid cuts. He said essentially, no, we're not cutting it. You're saying, look, we're the ones who are going to have to take care of our own people. Should there be cuts that you expect to happen?
Well, they've already been cuts.
Well, they have, but SNAP benefits
That's
cuts, right?
Medicaid and SNAP.
So what's in this budget that would take care of the backfill?
Well, that was a really important priority for House Democrats in particular, as well as Senate Democrats, is that when we were negotiating and making sure, and I want to give a shout out to our leader, Ranjiv Puri, who's done a great job making sure that House Democrats are at the table in this budget, making sure that we are backfilling to the greatest extent possible all of the atrocious federal cuts from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that really did a number on our Medicaid funding for our most vulnerable Michiganders, as well as SNAP funding that's food assistance to the most needy Michiganders. So we are doing everything we can to make sure that we're filling those buckets. And so I need to see the details on that. I need to see the details to make sure that our local cities, villages, and townships are not screwed over, because I will not vote for a budget.
We are glad you're a fast talker because you have a lot to get in, and it's important because we're out of time. But I want to say you really did cover kind of these four really important buckets. Come back on the show. Tell us how it goes. We're hoping by Tuesday to get a vote.
That's right.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Representative Noah Arbit. That is a Pulse for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Ruth Paraj. As always, it was great to be with you.